Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast. If you love and support the work that we do, consider joining my crew on Patreon to win amazing prizes like our adorable merch, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and incredible sex toys. Go to patreon.com/sexedwithdb to join my crew. Get discounts at all of your favorite sex toy shops at sexedwithdb.com. And follow us on Insta at sexedwithdb podcast and on TikTok at sexedwithdb. If you want to partner with us, email us at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. Let's talk about a lube I absolutely love, Uberlube. Uberlube makes sex better for everyone by reducing friction and increasing pleasure. Whether you're using it for solo sex time, sex with a partner, or both, Uberlube has a long-lasting performance that lets skin feel skin. It has simple, body and condom-friendly ingredients, is scent and color-free, dissipates when no longer needed so there's no sticky residue, and is recommended by leading doctors. Use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off at uberlube.com. If you've been a longtime fan of Sex Ed with DB, you've definitely heard of Clone-A-Willy. But if you're new here, let me fill you in. Clone-A-Willy makes incredible DIY molding kits that allow anyone to make an exact replica of any penis or vulva into a high-quality, 100% body-safe sex toy. And there are so many fun colors to choose from. Use promo code SEXEDWITHDB20 for 20% off at cloneawilly.com. And follow them on Instagram at CloneAWillyKit. We talk a lot about sex ed, but when we're shopping for products to support our sexual wellness, exploration, and expression, we head to the experts at Lion's Den. Lion's Den is an adult retailer with 46 locations nationwide and hundreds of your favorite brands. They have everything you need to explore and express your sexual side. Right now, you can use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off your purchase in-store and online. Follow them on social media at Lion's Den Adult on IG and TikTok for exclusive offers, deals, and giveaways. Hello, Sex Ed with DB listeners. We have made it somehow to the end of the season. This episode is the last one of season 6, and what a fucking year it's been, huh? Really intense, lots going on. But we will keep fighting for reproductive justice and rights and abortion access and all the good stuff we've been fighting for. Thank you all so much for tuning in over the past 20 episodes. We will be back for another season starting October of this year. So we're going to take the rest of the summer off after this episode, take a little break, and we'll be back. So please check us out on TikTok and Instagram for more content. And again, thank you so much for listening, for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the last episode of the season. Good morning, Sabia. Welcome to the podcast. How is it going for you today?
It's going okay so far.
That's good. That's good. Any notable thing? How are you? Like, what's up? What's new?
I think like anytime like we like ask the question of like how are you or what's going on, it's like always like what part of myself am I answering to? You know, I'm like, am I answering to like my personal self, just like the Sabia ecosystem that's over here? Or am I answering to like the work that I do and the way of the world? Like, it's like, you know, because it's all connected to me, but I'm like, what am I answering to? So I feel like I'm doing well as a physical human being. And, you know, the world is burning and I'm in it.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. So a lot comes up for you when that question is asked. I feel similarly when I've been chatting with guests. It just feels like a particularly really challenging time right now.
Yeah.
I think
like we have been in like a very challenging time for like the last 2.5, 3 years, right? Like I feel like once we think we're out of the challenging time, then something else happened. Then we're like, okay, it's another layer added to this challenging, like what? So it like to a certain point, you have to kind of separate yourself from the bigger thing in order to find like bright spots.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like especially, you are doing really, really important like birthing justice, anti-racist work, reproductive health work. And there are a lot of challenges in that world. And if you don't find the bright spots and don't feel like you are able to see the good in things, whether that be in that chocolate bar that you're eating
Exactly.
for dessert, or like going on like, an hour of, meditation and just kind of like
exactly
deep breathing. It's really important to
Yes.
reset. So yeah. Anyway, really glad you're here today. You're actually going to be our last episode of the season. So we're really, really excited to have you. It's been a wonderful.
Pressure is on.
It is
I'm
not.
kidding.
You got the.
I'm
no,
kidding.
It's going to be great. I'm really stoked. Let's get started. Why don't you tell everyone who you are and tell us about your work?
Yes. Let's see. I'm Sabia, rhymes with labia. I am Black. I am queer. I am a lot of things. But when it comes to this, like, what do I do? Supposedly, I became a doula in 2015. I'm a full spectrum doula, meaning that I work with any reproductive health experiences with anyone. And then I started that off in 2015 as a prison birth doula. So I worked with incarcerated folks and formerly incarcerated folks. Did not know that this is going to be my life's work, I guess. Like I like I knew that I loved it, but I was like, I didn't necessarily see, you know how it is when you have a passion, but you're also trying to pay the bills, right? Like you're like, how does this correlate? But now, 2022, I'm the CEO of 3 birth-related businesses. One is my nonprofit For the Village. So that's in San Diego. We bring community members in to be doulas, and we train them, and they like take care of San Diego in a way that is like amazing. And then I also have Birthing Advocacy Doula Trainings, where we train doulas and birth workers all over the world and like socially conscious, full spectrum, reproductive health ways. And then also I have myself. And so I do like a lot of workshops around anti-racism, building new like models of care and reproductive justice, evaluating the current systems that we're in. I mean, I go into liberation. I'm just all over the place. And then I think, I'll sum it up with I also 2 other businesses. One is a trucking company and one is a wine company.
Whoa, that came out a lot. I did not anticipate those.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all with the frame of reproductive justice in every single thing that I do. And yeah, outside of that, like I'm an investor. I invest in people and businesses that I want to see in the future. And I am, if people are into astrology and all that kind of stuff, I'm a double Sagittarius, Gemini moon. So I think that Sag, and I'm like what is it called? A manifesting generator. Like I just have to be.
When's your birthday?
In the mix. November 25th.
Okay, mine's December 6th. So
yes,
I also am a Sagittarius.
Yes. So, like I love what I do. I love feeling passionate about the work that I do, but I also need different avenues to do it. Like I can't just focus on one thing and I'd be like, I need to build systems.
Yeah. And you have.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of little summary of what I do. I'm an author. I'm trying to get used to that one. Got to practice that. I'm an author.
Because that one's kind of new because you have a book coming out in March 2023.
Yes. And I have to you got to add it. Like I'm a published author. It's like the same.
Oh, yeah. You have a very long title.
It is. That's why I'm like, you're
like, who am I? I don't know. It's a lot.
What am I today in this space? Yeah. But yes, I'm a lot of things, but at the end of the day, I'm just Sabia.
Oh, Sabia, that's a lot. You must be very, very busy. And yeah, clearly you're doing a lot of work that you very much are passionate about. I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about what it was like working with incarcerated people and doing doula work there.
Yeah. So for me, prior to being in doula work, I was working in the medical system. I was a nursing assistant. I thought I was going to be a nurse practitioner. I thought all the other great stuff. And as I was continuing to work in medical systems for 5 or 6 years, from a nursing assistant position, working a lot in hospitals, working with everything from, strokes to gunshot wounds to organ transplants to freak accidents to brain injuries, all these things. I'm working in step down ICUs, breathing machines, just all this stuff. I was like, this shit is ridiculous. It just didn't make sense. I was like, okay, so this person's on a breathing machine, right? Which is can't really get any when I say lower, I mean closer to death. That's what I mean.
Right.
You can't get any closer to death than being on a breathing machine.
Yeah.
And really needing assistance, staying alive. You get what I'm saying? And then they would have lunch or whatever if they could eat. And it would be the most terrible food. And I'm like, if this person is close to death and we're trying to get them further from it, we have to treat them holistically. It has to be good food along with medicine, if that's what they choose to do. It has to be even the therapist that was there, she would see clients or patients once a week, once every 2 weeks. I was like, there's no way that people are going through these traumatic experiences and only having one therapy session in a week. It's just not, what are we doing? And then it was also these other inequities around seeing differences between different treatment of different races, not only from not necessarily always from the nurse or the doctor, but from their actual systems that they're in, their health insurance. What do they have covered? Where do they live? Do they live in a food desert? Do they have access to things, right? Do they have access to education to help themselves get better, right? What are people making space for their ability to read or speak a different language or whatever, right? It was just all these things that I was seeing. And then I ran into doula work and I was like, okay, so I was like, this is different. I get to be my own person, right? Instead of working for a system where I have to say what they want me to say, have to follow the script or be scared that they're going to fire me or I'm going to get written up or something. So when I started working with the Prison Birth Project, it was totally different from just being in the medical spaces I was used to being in, but it was beautiful in the ways that it really, I personally have always had a philosophy around I'm not too far away from the person that I think is in a misfortunate situation. So a person who's homeless, I don't ever look at them and be like, they must have messed up. They must have been so terrible. I'm like, I could do something and end up in that same position. Right. An addict, as someone who also has a lot of pain conditions. I'm and has been through a lot, and that's a whole nother story, but I can see how I could become an addict. I don't put it through my brain that there's much difference in people. So when I started working with incarcerated folks and formerly incarcerated folks, it just felt like I was doing the work of breaking down that wall of this is incarcerated folks, this is me. Right. It was just, I was able to be in community. And then, also learning all the things around reproductive justice and learning about the inequities for incarcerated people and learning about, addiction to drugs and people's stories behind that. It was an amazing time. And it's also, it's a very specific way to start this work. Yeah. Because I didn't go into just
head first.
Yeah, I went all the way in, and it was also I didn't go into babies and picket fences and everything so great and everything because I was I understand that that's birth. I used to watch A Baby Story when I was a youth, and everything was it was oh, this is great, this baby is born and the person has a baby and whatever, and it's no, these people are incarcerated, their baby is born, who's the baby going to, what are they going to do when their chest is engorged, they're going what is their postpartum depression looking like, what mental health issues, it was a lot, but yeah. But it's a foundation to everything that I've done.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I definitely want to look into that organization. I want to know like let's go back. Like I want to know what your sex ed was like growing up and like what originated like for you, if you had any like aha moments, or like really if this mainly started as you were mentioning like as a nurse's assistant, like was that really the
Yeah.
pinnacle?
No, I think like, so before, like I said, when I was like, I don't know, probably like 10, whatever the case is, I used to watch like all this medical stuff on TLC. I knew that I wanted to be in the medical field. Like, I don't know if I knew it, like if I had like said it to myself, but like my actions were for sure, like watching the baby story, watching the ER stuff, watching all this other chaos. Um, and then, you get to a point in your own body where people start pushing this information to you as like, you're going to have sex one day. And you're like, am I?
Yeah,
Like, what's
are you
happening?
sure? Wow, how do you
Yeah.
know
Like,
that?
what is happening? So like I feel like my sex ed from that point, which I think actually does impact the way that I kind of see the world. My mom like handed me like somebody's book and was like, here's a book where you can learn about sex and like all the things and like masturbation and this and that, whatever.
That's cool.
And so yeah, so I was like, okay, cool. Like when I was like, here it is. Like I don't necessarily want to have like the talk with you, but I want you
You can figure it
to
out.
start like, I know you got some questions and stuff. Even though I wasn't even interested in sex at that point. Like I wasn't even like,
Not
I
on
was
your
a late
radar.
bloomer. Yeah, I was a late bloomer in that way. But anyway, so it was that. Then it was like, regular like school education. And then it's also like your friends having sex, right? And like doing things that you're like, oh, what happened? Like, really? That's how it works? Um, and then also my mom, like when I was like 13, 14, she took me to the clinic, like up the street from my house. And like, I went, like, she basically, the doctor, I didn't have to get examined or anything, but I like went in, she told me like how to like get birth control if I needed it, or like how to come to the clinic if I need. So it was like, I feel like my like sexual kind of education, if I think about who I am now and my mom and the way she handled it, it was just like, here's information. I know that you're going to do what you're going to do. Like, I ain't going to sit here and say, like, you're not going to do this or you're not going to do that. Here's how to get birth control. Like, because I think, like, in a way, like, my advocacy for things is like, in a way, I love to inform people. It's like, you're going to do what you're going to do.
Right.
So let me, like, here's the thing. So yeah, so like sex ed for me was like kind of, I want to say holistic in approach, because it wasn't like I was just like going to school and learning things. It was like my mom was like, you good?
Yeah.
Anything you want to talk about? Sure. But I really wasn't even interested.
Right.
I didn't have sex until after high school.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's that, like, I wouldn't say that's abnormal. Like, right?
Yeah. I mean, for
It's
where
like,
I was in my life,
okay.
people were doing it.
Okay.
You
So
know
maybe you were
what I'm
like
saying?
late in your friend group or
Yes. And my friend group, I was definitely like late, but also because I was queer. I didn't really know what was going on. I was, you know, having relationships with boys or like, cis men. And I was like, not, it's like, what is this whole thing that people are so like happy about? I don't get it.
like,
And
I'm not
then,
into this.
yeah, like it's not really like, it's not pulling me in,
Sure.
where like my other friends were like, oh my God. And I was like, and
Maybe
then I
not.
started like dating women and I was like, oh,
Oh.
okay. I was like, all right,
Now
I
I'm
got it
awake.
now. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Um,
Yeah.
okay, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. And yeah, really cool that your mom was, not necessarily bringing out her chalkboard and being like, okay, here's the anatomy or whatever, but giving you
Yeah.
resources, telling you that she was there, like offering unconditional support. It sounds like that's amazing to have a parent who is able to provide that.
For sure. And my mom is still the homie now.
Love
Like
it.
all my friends, like first of all my friends are just queer. We're just all very some form of gay. And so like my mom, like I just bought her, like, she was like, can you buy me this Coach bag? So she like sends it to me or whatever. And it's like some rainbow Coach bag. This is in June too. So like Pride Month is popping,
Wow.
And so like she like gets her bag and she has her matching shoes, and she was like, I'm talking, this is my village. I'm repping for my village.
Oh my
We
God,
out
I
here.
love her.
So my
That's
mom is like
fantastic.
very like,
she's an ally. Incredible. We love. That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. I never really felt like I had any, not, I mean, yeah, I don't know if I have any like quote unquote like sexual shame or darkness. I mean, yeah, of course,
Wonderful.
coming out the closet was a thing. Like coming out the closet was a thing. But like, I don't know. It felt, what's the word I'm looking for? Compared to what my other friends were doing back in that was like the 90s, early 2000s. I felt like I was in a space where the access and information and support I had was probably like new to that era.
Yeah.
There we go.
For sure. Yeah. Like it was, I don't want to say like revolutionary for people to be coming out, because people have been coming out for centuries in their own way, whatever way was like appropriate.
But you know, it's like now, like when I see like kids now, like kids, youth, they're just like, they're just like out. There is no announcement. They're just like, oh, this is just what it is.
Yes. It is so interesting to me. As like someone who teaches sex ed in the classroom, and I talked about this on another podcast, but basically like, granted, like with the acknowledgement that I'm in Brooklyn and this was like a private middle school, right? So these kids are like coming from wealthy families and they have the privilege of being able to like do that, and their parents are liberal, X, Y, and Z. That being said, they all, without prompting, are like, I'm bisexual and I'm non-binary, and they're like 11 years old. And I'm like, that's cool. Like maybe you know those things, maybe those labels are going to change, but also like, we're talking about STI. Like we don't need, like, let me teach you something before you like insert all of your identities.
That is wild. I can't even, it's wild.
Yeah, it's really, and we're like not that much older than them, right? Like we're not,
we're not
this huge generation gap. It's like, oh, in middle school for me in the early 2000s, like it very much felt like, oh, like there was like one queer kid who is out or not out, and like, you know, and not to say that was better. Obviously it's better to have kids who feel comfortable in their skin, but what I feel nervous about is that these kids are going to go anywhere else and recognize that like there are people who are harmful, and like maybe they feel strong enough in their identities to be like, fuck you, who cares, I don't care what you think. And I hope so, but like I feel concerned for young people who really have, you know, wear everything on their sleeves.
I can hear that, because I definitely think like with anything, right, like anything that is not in dominant culture, you know, even as someone I'm 33, like, you know, there's like a level of assessment when I go from place to place. Like me being Black is not something I can hide, right? So like, of course, it is what it is. Here we go, right? But even with that, right, there's this awareness of my Blackness. Like, okay, should I go here? You know, like, and anyone who's a person of color, we know how that shit rocks. Like, we're just like, okay, not the place for me, like whatever. But I think also this like assessment also kind of helps me to understand like what am I going to utilize? So like, for example, like I'm obviously queer and I whatever, but I'm femme presenting and I can present as straight if I need to, right? Like people are just like, oh, you dress like a girl, quote unquote, whatever. So like there's a time where like I'll just not tell them my business, right? Because I'm like, I'm going to use this femme presenting privilege. Because I'm Black too. So like you're already shocked by the Blackness. I'm not going to bring up the queerness. You get what I'm saying?
Not double shocking me today.
I'm not gonna bring up the kinky, the poly, the this. I ain't doing all that, because you're gonna either, you might beat my ass for real. Like this is a danger that like existing in the world, right? So I think like I get what you're saying in the sense of like, yes, being very proud of like who you are, but also I think like maybe like older generations have this level of assessment that comes like first before we like
the skepticism.
You know, certain environments, like, and I'm from Jersey, so like I know like in Jersey I have more freedom even in, you know, 80s, 90s, whatever, because north stuff, you know, north part of the world or part of the US. But like in the South where I'm at now, it's like I have to, even now I'm more aware of like, where am I in Atlanta or am I like in Georgia?
Really important
like,
distinction.
Yeah, like where am I? Like, how do these parts play? And like, what do I, and even like, I remember I had this shirt that said, one of them shirts that say whatever the fuck it says. And my mom was like, you're just wearing that around? Because like, in her generation, right? It was like, you're like wearing some shit on your chest. Like, what if people feel away about this?
Right.
Right. And so like, it is like that level of awareness that we have to have for our own safety, not because we're like hiding anything from anybody, but more so like our own safety. Will somebody be here to protect me if shit gets crazy or gets wild? Like,
totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Really interesting. Moving and grooving, shifting gears.
yeah.
I wanna hear about your upcoming book. As you mentioned, you will be a published author. And your book is Birthing Liberation. And so I want to hear about like what the book is about. Like, well, obviously it's about birthing liberation, but like more than that. And just like some of the frameworks that you share in it.
Yeah. So Birthing Liberation, subtitle How Reproductive Justice Will Set Us Free, is based off of the work I've been doing for the last several years. In the spaces that I've created, where we talk about, racism and this and that all freely. And even in that space, like really understanding, like to talk about that freely means that sometimes you hear about things that are really painful, and really hurtful. And so with all that being said, the book was created to, yes, center the experience of Black birthing people who are dying more than white birthing people in all the ways, and our children as well. But really it gets into like the framework of reproductive justice. What does that mean? How do we apply it to the work that we do? But it takes it a step further in getting into like, what is trauma? And so in my personal belief, I believe that like when we're talking about the Black perinatal health disparities, right, where Black birthing people are dying 2 to like 10 to 11, depending on where you're at, times that white birthing people, we know that we have technology that can save 60% of people, right? Like we have the technology, like this doesn't have to be what it is. But even with technology, we have to depend on people to be able to deploy that technology. And so for me, I think about like racism being a trauma, and then like, how does that affect the way that people are utilizing technology, one, but two, how they're maneuvering space, right? When they're with clients, when they're with patients who are Black. So anyway, it gets into understanding like our personal trauma, our personal bias, our personal, self, in order to go towards the goal of collective liberation, right? So one of the things that I believe is like, as a birth worker, or as anyone who works with anyone, and just as a person who's living, like it goes beyond birth. It's like, we have to know like, what is going on with me? Like, where are my blind spots, right? Where are the things that I have to be aware of? What am I reacting out of? Am I reacting out of like the present moment? Or am I reacting out of trauma that's happened to me? Am I building, general ideas about people? Am I building like, where's all that coming from? If I'm talking about collective liberation, I can't leave it to the collective to heal me, right? Like, but I can do my own personal work so that when I'm within the collective, I can have the capacity for what it takes to be in a collective. And like, even when we talk about like, anti-racism and reproductive justice, and even though, all the stuff we got going on in the world right now, specifically in the US, a lot of it is like people just holding on to their ideas because of their fear of being erased, or like people just having no capacity for difference or nuance. Right. So it's like, if it's not one way, then it's not the thing. And now we can't even get past like helping people because we're so stuck, right, in this like traumatic circle, this trauma cycle that we're in ourselves. So it talks about that.
Casual.
And it goes into like, what is collective liberation and what does that mean for us to like get there? And even we're talking about these like systems, right? Like we talk about, whether it's talking about the medical industrial complex or criminal justice system, whatever it is, those systems are made out of people, right? So like we can't like we have to see the people. Like, why are they making these decisions? Where are they coming from? Like, what is going on? So anyway, it's about all those things. And it's like,
question for you, like, are all those things, I'm hearing you say like these systems are made of people and we have to like hear, especially for like the medical industrial complex, right? And you mentioned like basically like the prison industrial complex, like is it kind of all under the umbrella of like us living in a capitalistic society and just everything needing to bring home the Benjamins, which is why
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right. Like it's like these connections, right? And it's also this kind of like a lot of people are doing things out of survival. A lot of people are doing things because they don't know any other way to do it, right? Like it's all this, like we have to be able to sit down. And I think this is kind of like a point of tension just across like birth, just anything. We have to be able to sit down and hear people, even when it is something that we don't agree with, even when it's something that hurts, because how are we going to create dialogue? How are we going to create like a compromise? We can't, because everyone's just like, I don't want to hear that. That's just wrong. Right. Where for me, I'm like, I probably don't want to hear it. Right. Like, depending on the day. Right. But like, can I have capacity to and make space to listen to you? And for us to be an actual dialogue, like us just being like this, like, wanting to fight all the time, it's not getting us anywhere. Right. And like when we're talking about specifically about Black perinatal health disparities, like not helping, not getting better, like we have all the technology, but people are not sitting down. We're not having cross-discipline conversations. We're not willing to learn from each other. We're not willing to, and it's just like, what are we doing?
Do you ever look at yourself in the mirror and think, damn, my part is fine art? Well, Clona Willy definitely thinks so. Made in Portland, Oregon, Clona Willy makes for the most personalized sex toy on the planet, and Clona Pussy makes for the most unique memento. Their mission is to create unique, affordable, and high-quality products that will not only last over the years, but provide their customers with a fun and memorable experience. Use promo code SEXEDWITHDB20 for 20% off at clonawilly.com. Close your eyes and think of your ideal sex toy. No matter what you like, you'll find it at Fun Factory. A few things Fun Factory's toys all have in common. They're 100% body safe so your mind is free to focus on fun. They include sex educator design games to get you going. And they're made in Germany, meaning they're long lasting. You get more O's from your toy when it stays in your nightstand and out of the landfill. Follow Fun Factory on IG at Fun Factory USA and use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off your new favorite German vibe. So in terms of like what birthing justice on the ground like looks like for you, for Black people, for Black birthing people specifically, how would you like describe like the way in which we get there?
Yeah, so I think a part of like the book Birthing Liberation, I talk about like these like 4 principles of reproductive justice, and I'm not gonna give you a whole lesson right now, but one of them is centering the most marginalized. And the reason for centering the most marginalized is that anytime we figure out or solve a problem for the most impacted community, right, that's dealing with it the hardest, having the worst outcomes, that we just create solutions for everyone else. Right. So like even in this situation with Black perinatal health disparities, if we can figure out what's going on with them, can, create systems that help. And it's going to be more than one system. So that's another thing, right? Like it's not going to be one way to do this. In New York, it may look a certain way. For a different population, it may look a certain way. So having the capacity for like, there's not one right answer, but if the result is better, then it's one of the solutions, right? So anyway, so if we center the most marginalized Black people in this space, get things together for them, get these 60% of people that can be prevented, right? Like it's only going to be much better for the community as a whole, right? And so I think like that's every issue. Right. So when we think about reproductive justice and kind of like using that framework to really understand and analyze where we want to go, it's like the to me, one of the right ways to do it. So I can go to a whole lesson, but I think a big part of it is like when we're talking about these issues that are coming forth, just saying, well, who is this most impacting? How are they being impacted? How do we bring them to the table for them to also explain to us their solutions? Because they probably have the answer.
Right.
Right. and follow their leadership and sprinkle in, of course, the ways that we're experts, things, the details that we can do. But like, if we bring in people that are being most affected and ask them for a solution, they probably have an answer, or can probably at least give you a lot of feedback or understanding of what the actual situation is, right? But when we're in these systems that are like, we're going to talk about Black perinatal health disparities, but we're not really going to have too many Black people at the table. It's like,
why? Like, what is going on there? Yeah.
So now you put this whole thing together and it doesn't deal with shit.
Right.
Right. It doesn't actually help the community. Like, the community has not been involved in this. Like, what are you talking about? So, it's that, I think that's kind of the first part when we're talking about like aiming to do better, specifically for Black birthing people, and just Black people in general. It's like, just ask us the questions and pay us to do the work. And like, what's the word? Support the community in that effort. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like it's definitely all wrapped up in the medical industrial complex, because we think, we doctors in America go to school for a long time. They're very well paid. They wear their white coats. We depend on them for, the right answers. We think that they are the be all end all of how to get healthier, how to fix our problems. And the issue with that is that, like, they do not share people's experiences, usually, that of the patients that they're taking care of. So like, how could they really know if they're not in that community?
Exactly.
Bingo was name-o.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So obviously, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I think we would be remiss not to mention, at least, just discussing abortion access. And I know, like, offline, when you and I had chatted before, you were like, okay, let's not like be stuck in the present so much with this, but really let's frame it as like the future of abortion access, which I thought was a really helpful frame.
Yeah.
And I think for myself, like, I just kind of wanted to share a little bit about my kind of recent experience of thinking about that, and really thinking about specifically like medication abortion, and like understanding that, I guess, the statistics show that like 1 in 4 people with uteruses and women have heard of abortion medication, like don't know, like 3 out of 4 don't know that it exists. And so I thought that was like a really striking fact. And like, when I was protesting in Washington Square Park, like the day that Roe v. Wade was overturned, there were still like a lot of signs that had like bloody hangers on them. And I think we talked about this in a different episode, but essentially it's just interesting how there's like such a difference of opinion between like people in the reproductive health space when it comes to that imagery. And for me, like, knowing the fact that like medication abortion is statistically safer than Tylenol, and like is like abortion is safer than childbirth, like really understanding that, and yet knowing that 3 out of 4 people with uteruses don't know that abortion medication exists, and that we are perpetuating this image of like a bloody coat hanger, like from the 70s, that like is not our current reality, is harmful. And like, really, to me, when it comes to the future of abortion access, like those stories and facts and statistics like are coming to mind. And so I don't know, I think I just wanted to name that, and like for people listening to understand that.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
It's a lot, right? Yeah, so many thoughts. So I think, so we, with this, overturning of Roe, right? Obviously very impactful, beyond just abortion access, right? Like, we see now that people who are needing certain medications are like being blocked from getting a medication because this medication can help with an abortion. And like, people that there's different procedures that are considered to be abortions that people need to save their lives beyond an abortion, purpose, and like not having access to those things. And like, there's states where even though they have trigger bans or whatever, even before those things are in place, they're just preparing and just starting to shut shit down now, right?
Yep. They're scared.
And so it's scared. Yeah, they're scared. They're scared about the legal ramifications. They're scared about like, all the things. And so I think like right now, like we are in a space where we have to really be mindful of this is like really a very traumatic experience. Like
Yes.
it's a very traumatic collective experience too, right? And so it's very easy, like when we're talking about trauma, it's very easy to get caught in like a cycle of like, I feel upset, I get, I shut down or whatever that cycle is for you. But I feel like literally for our survival, we have to think about what is the future of abortion access and abortion care. And so when I was writing the book Birthing Liberation, and I was like, building out like, writing is a whole fucking thing, first of all. Like I can't believe my book is like currently like out of my hands, like
wow,
whatever. I hope y'all,
that's exciting.
Yeah, it's like out of my hands, copy editing, they're about to like whatever, like it's a whole thing. But anyway, at the end of the book, after I wrote out like all the things that were in my brain, I was like, oh, I have created a new framework that is built off reproductive justice for sure. And it's called birth neo-terrorism. And the ways that is reproductive justice as the foundation, but it also includes like these like building a personal ongoing healing, like trauma healing process with yourself as like part of the work, right? Like, it's also about like thinking about innovation and putting like ideas to paper and making them happen as a part of the work. Because when we talk about like right now, right, with this overturning Roe, of course we can have conversations about like how terrible it is, because it is, right? And that can't be missed. But people are still going to be needing abortions. They're still going to be looking for an abortion, right? So
that won't
stop. That won't stop. So how do we want the future of abortion to look? So one of the things that you mentioned was like, 3 out of 4 people don't know about medication abortion. So my question is like, okay, well, what do we need to innovate or put out into the world so that more people have more access to this information, right? Because it's there. Another thing too, when I think about like birth neo-terrorism and just the future of abortion is we have to start to begin to divest from the medical industrial complex. And that doesn't mean all the way, like I'm not telling someone like, oh my gosh, go from like going to the doctor and just using herbs as it meant. Like if you need some medicine, I understand.
Go get that Advil.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like if you need an x-ray, go get that popping, right? But it's about what is your personal relationship to that system, and how do you divest and start to invest in our community healers who have been doing this work prior to the medical industrial complex being built, right? So like for abortion care, like before, hospitals, and it became this very like, go into the hospital, go into the clinic, whatever thing, we were getting the job done, right? We were getting the job done, and not in the traumatic, like, hangers were happening, you know what I'm saying? But there was things, there was herbs, there was ways of doing things that were to be, that were healthy, safe, people were doing their thing. It was just a part of the system. You get what I'm saying? Like, so as like people thinking about the future, I'm thinking about education, getting that out there. I'm thinking about access to other pathways to accessing abortion, whether that is like someone assisting like travel, like just to get to a clinic, or whether that is someone taking a different type of modality to get to the same result, right? And then it's also this other piece around like building newer systems, right? Different systems of care and different systems of not only education about medication abortions, but learning your body, right? So this thing that I'm working on now is like learning your algorithm, right? Because there's some people in this world, and this is just like a very specific example. There's people in this world where like, as soon as they get pregnant, they know that they're pregnant. They're like, the sperm went in, I'm pregnant. Like, they know, right? Like, because it's this level of embodiment that they have, but like they know a little twinge is off. This is the pregnancy twinge, but then that person who has that awareness early on, they're able to use things such as herbal abortion options or medication abortion options or whatever the case it is, right? Now, a part of our world, because of capitalism, because of all this other bullshit, whatever, we're just all disembodied. Like a lot of us are disembodied, right? And a lot of us
we're
are
not in tune with our bodies.
Not in tune with our bodies, right? And like a lot of us are, and not because of our own fault, but because like you're trying to get up, you gotta go to work, you gotta help with the kids, you gotta get this, you gotta do this, you got this stress, that stress, right? So there's like a purposeful intention behind like capitalism, all that, to keep you outside of yourself, right? Because if you're outside of yourself, then you're not aware of the power that you have inside. So,
ooh, that gave me full body chills.
Yeah. So like, so like this level of disembodiment has been beneficial for these systems to continue, right? Like, but now looking at the future of abortion access, looking at the future of just our bodily autonomy, it's like, how do we return to ourselves? How do we return back to these systems of knowing, right? And I think for some people, it's going to be simple. Like, I don't want to say simple, but it's going to be like, some people are like, I'm tracking my cycle, right? But for some people, like cycle tracking is not what it is. Sometimes it's like, I'm tracking how I feel based on the moon. I'm tracking how I based on what I eat. I'm tracking on like, I'm tracking like when someone walks in the room, what is the energy that I feel from them? What is my body telling me about this person, right? And I think like we need to get back to that. Like we have to get back to that. Like embodiment, especially for people of color, our embodiment is going to be our ways for survival. It's like, it's how we survive. It's how we move. Like we can't, unfortunately, depend on medical spaces who, by the way, have so much data on our bodies that it's wild. You know, like when we think about just data collection in general, from the apps that we use to the whoever, the whatever, it's just like people have so much data and can tell us like on our phones what we're gonna like.
Oh yeah, it's scary.
Right?
They know exactly who you are.
Right? But we can't tell anything about ourselves.
Yeah. Wow. That is really fascinating. Yeah, I love this piece on like getting back in your body. Like I just feel like you're totally right. Like it's so easy every day to just put your phone in your face and just like scroll and like answer your emails and like do, especially with the pandemic, like all of us are on our technology more and more. Is really hard when we couldn't leave the house. There's a lot of panic.
Yep.
And like really putting something in place every day, even if it's for 5 minutes, like going outside if you can, or like sitting in your space and just like noticing your thoughts, like meditation or like things of that nature.
And like in whatever ways like works for you, right? And I think like that's also a big thing, because I think like especially like our spirituality world, whatever, it has definitely been like really drowned in whiteness sometimes. So like
Yes.
you know, like it becomes like this kind of these systems that don't really connect to everybody. So people get kind of like, even meditation in itself, it doesn't always work for everyone. Not everyone can sit down and be like, let me think about like your meditation may be walking, your meditation may be dancing, your meditation may be writing, your meditation may be having sex with somebody that you really like care about and like seeing what the vibes are, you know? So it's like we need to get down to that. And like I think it seems like for some people it's like, how does that connect to abortion? But it's like this abortion issue is not just about abortion, it's about control.
Yes.
Right. It's about like leading the society in a direction that, you know, whoever and whatever wants people to be led into. So it's like in order for us to really think about that, like our ideas of abortion access and abortion, it's like, how do we break these? Like what is liberation for us? Right. And like, how do you find liberation even in your daily existence? Right. And maybe that liberation process looks like educating people about medical abortions who don't usually have access to that. Right. But you have the privilege, the time, and the awareness to do that. That is a liberatory practice.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like this like abortion conversation and the future of it is really tied into like our bodily autonomy, our definition of liberation, our ability to practice it, while also being aware of ourselves, our needs for our sustainability. Right. So you can go out there and start educating, you know, 1,000 people this week, but you're probably going to be too tired to do it for another 3 or 4 months, because 1,000 people a week is too much. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
But could you do 50 people? Yeah. Could you do 50 people a week while also maintaining your own trauma that you're dealing with because of this shit?
Yeah.
Right. Like, well, also like, you know, doing what you got to do for yourself. But that 50 people, they're going to come with some information that is coming from a place of like centeredness, wholeness. You're going to come with embodiedness, right? And they're going to be able to kind of feel that and want to mimic that. and then they're going to create sustainable practices themselves, right? And then some of those people will probably become educators themselves. Like, this is like liberatory practices that help build collective liberation, instead of I'm acting from a place of trauma. So now I'm out here trying to save everyone. I'm doing all the things.
Right.
I've been doing everything. I've been protesting. I've been sending out this. I've been creating zines. I've been doing this. And now 2 months into it, I'm so burnt out.
Yeah. Can't do it. Yeah. I
Can't do
totally
it.
hear you. You got to sustain yourself for sure. Yeah. Especially
Right?
now, right? Like
Because it's not like this is a temporary ban.
No, it's certainly not. I mean, we're going to have to figure out how to sustain ourselves and our communities. And again, like, people have been doing this for a very long time. Like, abortion funds have been running for a very long time. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. I feel like I try to hammer home, like, volunteer your time, donate your dollars, and inform your communities. And like, that's
Exactly.
kind of where you should be headed.
Yeah, when people are like, what should I like look into your community? People are probably doing the work already 9 times out of 10.
Yes.
So just help them do the work.
Yes.
And expand the work. And we're like, it's instead of like, I have like a section in my book, like, it's like, instead of reinventing, just reinvest, like.
That's good.
Just, where did you have your money before? Take it out of it and reinvest it into the community. And I think like the thing that I see, I don't say as a benefit of like overturning Roe, because I don't mean that in that way, but I feel like it really is pushing us back to, what are people doing in the community? We're the community healers, right? Because the community healers are around, they just haven't been able to sustain, right? Because they also have bills. They're also working in capitalism. They're also doing these things. But it's so many people around us with so much wisdom, whether it's our elders and people that, have this education or whatever. There are so many systems of care that really like gives us our bodily autonomy and gives us our control and like builds this capacity. But we have to reinvest into these people. We can't say, oh, you're a community healer, do this shit for free.
Right.
Because we don't live in a free world. You know what I'm saying? So like, we have to, like, as we're looking into like moving beyond this and really being in a post-Roe America, right? For God knows how long. It could be 50 years, it could be 20, who knows, right? Like, how do we want to like create avenues and pathways to care? And how are we going to be telling our children about it, right? Because it just changes the conversation. Right. For a lot of people, right? Like, if you think about it, before it was like my mom took me to the clinic and told me at 14 you can get birth control. That might not be the option for some people, right? Like, so what are we telling them about like their communal resources? What are we telling them about how they can track their cycle and understand their fertility, right? What are we like? These are the things that we have to be talking about as far as like building a future now that we're in this post-Roe America.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Sabia, you're so cool. I'm sure you get that all the time. But I learned a lot from you today. So thank you so much for being on. I would love to hear like what's next for you and where folks can follow you if they want to see your work.
Man, what's next for me? So, I'm always working on 1,000 things. But really, a big focus is obviously, right now I'm really in like content creation mode, like really just getting some things out on my website, some re-energizing some things, and also building a lot of new things. So, like I said, like birth neoterrorism, thinking about the future, thinking about, new models of care, thinking about education opportunities, how do we make that accessible, is really where I'm focusing a lot of my attention. How do we like build these relationships with ourselves of like trauma healing? Like, that's a lot of what I'm doing, because I understand that as we move forward, like, I'm a powerhouse. Like, I love this shit, right? Like, but it takes more than me to move forward, right? Like, it's so many people who are presently doing the work too, like bomb ass people that I'm in community with, but we also need more. Right. So my kind of like mission is to educate those people, to support those people, to create space for innovation. So I'm like literally working on like innovation labs and all that other stuff. Like, I'm all over the place, but it's going to make sense. I promise you.
I trust you.
It's going to make sense. And these are things I was like starting to work on like beginning of this year before all this like roast shit was popping. But yeah, like I am here. I am around. You can always look at like my Instagram, Sabia Wade, or sabiawade.com to see like all of my businesses and whatever. But yeah, like I am just like being a voice for the future of like what we're moving into. And also, you know, always doing my education for the doulas and the people who are doing the work now and supporting them. But just making sure that we keep focused on like, what do we want for our children? What do we want for ourselves? What do we want as like we move through these laws and bullshit systems, but understanding that we're still going to be here. So if we're still going to be here,
yeah.
How do we want to navigate the things that are existing?
So incredible. Sabia, thank you so much for being on today. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on. Thank you for allowing this conversation to happen. And thank you for, I know that y'all also have done a lot of work and conversation around specifically this abortion topic. So thanks for bringing it out, because that's part of the future, right? It's like making this information accessible.
In a world that constantly encourages you to change, it's bold to just be yourself. Sexual expression and satisfaction are different for everybody, so rather than conforming to others, focus on falling in love with who you are. Lion's Den sources the very best products to help you find what you like and help you feel confident expressing your sexual desires. You can get 15% off in-store and online using code SEXEDWITHDB to begin exploring everything about yourself. Follow Lion's Den on social, @LionsDenAdult on Instagram and TikTok. Let's talk about lube and condoms. Something important to know is that oil-based lube is not to be used with condoms because the oil can cause the condom to break or tear, which would defeat the purpose of using it. Thank goodness for Uberlube. Uberlube is latex compatible, so it's safe and effective to use with condoms. But wait, there's more. Dispensing 2 drops of Uberlube inside a condom and a measured pump outside will increase pleasure. What are you waiting for? Use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off at Uberlube.com. 7 years ago, I was gifted my first ever vibrator. It was a Rabbit Vibe, and I was immediately in love with it and the pleasure it gave me. Having a bit of experience with Rabbit Vibes over the last 7 years, I am absolutely stoked to tell you about an amazing one from Fun Factory. Miss Bai from Fun Factory is the dual vibrator you've been dreaming of, with a powerful German-engineered motor that gives you super strong vibrations. Follow Fun Factory on IG @FunFactoryUSA and use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off your new favorite German Rabbit Vibe. Our creator, host, EP, and sound engineer is me, Danielle Bezalel, aka DB. Our co-producer and communications lead is Cathren Cohen. Our music theme is by Hook Sounds, and our ad music is by my stepdad, Bill Gant. Thank you so much to our featured guests, partners, and our listeners. Want to advertise with us? Email us at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. For more sex ed content, follow us on IG @SexEdWithDB Podcast and on TikTok @SexEdWithDB. See you next time.